So this episode of the Schbang In It is interesting because we've got somebody from Schbang. Now, if you've been following Schbang over the last couple of months, you know that within the midst of a difficult economic climate and within the midst of lockdown, we've gone and signed, between April and October, we went and signed about 15 businesses, 15 new large businesses. We grew over 150 people in size, and winning that business consistently takes a lot of effort. So really what goes on behind the mind of somebody who's at the forefront of winning those businesses is what we have on the podcast this time. So Indraneel Gawde is our guest, fellow Schbanger guest on the podcast. He's taken over new business at Schbang about a year and a half back. He came from a strong, rich legacy, but he's really come into his own on this role and helped us grow to where we are. We're about a 500 team size right now and growing. I think Indraneel and I have discussed that by Diwali at the end of this year we need to be 1,000 people team size. So hopefully you enjoy the conversation in terms of what he brings to the table, in terms of what it's taken to win those businesses and what it's going to take to win all those many more as we continue this growth journey. So I hope you enjoy this episode of the Schbang In It. Indraneel Gawde,
the most awaited episode of this podcast.
Head of New Business at Schbang.
Pan-India.
Pan-India. So we're going to talk a bit about new business. Actually, that's all we're going to talk about, mainly. Because if I try to move it elsewhere, we might get into trouble. So
yeah, I've been given warnings from multiple people.
So we'll talk about new business and 15 new businesses till October, after the lockdown was declared, one under your reign. So what is it that you did?
So I've been thinking about this. I've been trying to put my finger on it because I know that if someone asks me, it should sound like, there's eloquence and intelligence in it. But I think it was more of just a factor of that mentality that we created in lockdown, that no matter what happens, we're just going to go out and gun and win more. I think it also came a lot from the management, from the point of view that we're not cutting anyone. So we had to make it that doubly effort to grow. Also, I think we've come into our own. It's a little bit like Schbang has become a little bit like fine wine. Like, I think the first 4 years of effort that was put into it has started reaping its benefits across the board. I think I've mentioned this to you many times in the past also.
So you want to say thanks to your predecessor?
I do want to say thanks to my predecessor, although I will give you 20% of the credit. But still, credit where credit is due. So definitely a lot of, I think, pre-work went into it, and a lot of the work that the operations teams were doing made our job that much easier. We presented the rich body of work that we had, and I think it was very, very appreciated. Also, I'd be amiss if I didn't say this, the BD team, the people who are working in the BD team, I think a blend of the fact that they worked in the operations system well, so they understand from a practical perspective when we're suggesting. Because a lot of times when I go into pitches, stuff that we've heard from clients is that a refreshing change from Schbang is we don't pitch ideas that are just there for the sake of pitching. We try to pitch ideas with some semblance of executional thought put into it.
Yeah.
And another thing that we did find, I think...
So you think the teams that you have, because you hire specifically from an execution background and then you groom them for business development.
Yeah.
So you think that brings a lot?
I think that brings a lot of advantage. I mean, I've had the ones without an execution background and the ones with an execution background, and the ones with an execution background are far superior. I think a lot of other things that goes hand in hand, because BD is the kind of department, where we're dependent on so many other departments. So not knowing that lay of the land within an organization, or not knowing how a particular department functions, is a big disservice to BD, which is where the execution background, I think, played a huge role.
So new business has to the new business department in any company has to kind of be like a blue-eyed boy of all the departments.
It has to. And it also has to be a little bit of, like you said, for new business, you have to understand the core or the old business well enough to be able to successfully leverage that to get the new business. So I think,
and also understand the customer well, right?
That goes without saying, but that's, I think, an external factor. I'm talking about just the internal things that you need to get to that point of being able to go to an external customer and wow him or wow her. I think comes with that little bit of that sound knowledge that I know what the actual legwork will go into to execute something like this.
Right.
So you're talking with absolute knowledge. So I think that's what really helped us a lot. And also, like I said, the build-up, which I'm giving my predecessor a little bit of credit for, has really catapulted the kind of brands that are looking at an organization like Schbang right now. I mean, definitely it's rooted in the fact that all of the operations team and the culture here is very, very hardworking, and sometimes I would say obsessively hardworking, which I don't take to be a bad thing in any way whatsoever. I think has led us to this point.
Yeah. Yeah. And, so when you're talking about now, of course, like from the standpoint of saying that, okay, it's all well to say that, being able to work within, but in a period like business is down,
right,
people are cutting down their costs, you're still going and winning all these businesses. So there must be some keen sense of understanding what's going on in the customer's business also.
Yeah.
So how is it that, your team and you, how do you guys sense what's going on in the customer's business?
So I'll tell you what I think what we've developed over the years, which has been a very, very helpful thing is, one is obviously the SOPs that have been set in place. From a briefing standpoint, a lot of times the customer wants to do a lot of things, but they can't fine-tune their approach, I think, a lot of times when they come to the agency, because they are anyway overwhelmed with doing their operational stuff. They want to just outsource this marketing functionality and they expect you to just get it. And I feel, and I've worked at a couple of organizations in the past, and what I've seen the difference being is that there it was all about haan se haan milana with the client. You don't want to ask the hard questions or make those tough conversations happen in the initial phase.
Yeah.
Worried that maybe they'll.
So what are some of these
you.
tough questions like?
Like, you have to sometimes be very regimental in asking them about what are their financial commitments they're looking at. Because if they have hypothetically a 20 lakh marketing budget and you go back to them with a 60 lakh marketing plan, apples and oranges, they realize that they're not going to be able to fine tune it down, and if they do, they're going to water down the concept. So being able to tell them from a point, not coming off that, like, that's something that we pay a lot of attention to, not to make it seem like I want to know how much money you have before I assess whether it's worth my time. That's not the approach at all. It's more from the perspective is you tell me how much you have so I can come back to you with something that meets that expectation. So I think managing their expectations, one very, very hard question that you have to ask them.
For example, what if the client says, no, you come back to me with what you think is best, and then how do you try to navigate that to get the real? Because there's always a real.
Yeah, for
and
sure.
then there's always the, hey, I'm second guessing you. So, how do you get to the real even if the client is trying to second guess you?
So there are two ways. I'm very chaplu about it in the sense that I'm very straight up saying that, look, I don't want it to come to a point where I come to you where your expectations and what I'm presenting are not matched up.
But that's the truth, right?
That is the truth. But you have to also say it in a way that, I'm here to work for you. I want to make this relationship happen. And what I need to make this relationship happen, which is key for me, is to understand what your framework is. So when you position it to them that you're not really, I think a shift in the language, instead of saying that I'm coming on board as your agency or as your vendor, to make them feel that you're coming on board as their partner, which is what we aim to do any which way. But in that initial stage, anything you say can be chalked up to sales. Another thing I try to do the other way around is, we do a little assessment of the client, see how much their turnover is, see what they've been doing in the past across marketing activities. And by experience, you have an estimation of how much they'll be spending approximately, and you put that notional figure out there. Okay, can I come back to the 20 lakh budget? Because you've maybe reverse calculated and come back with that number. So and when you put that, they have to answer. They generally do.
Got it. Okay. Now let's switch gears. Okay, fine. You spoke a lot about the past body of work of Schbang, and that helps you attract a lot of new customers. If you were running a new agency, if you were starting from ground up, then how would you do it?
So I think what I would do specifically, I don't know if I wasn't part of the original part of that Schbang journey, but I don't know if that was the same approach that you all took, is institutional based, right? Like, where instead of winning one individual client and going after, say, a standalone brand, you try to go out for a conglomerate or a business house that has multiple various businesses inside it. Prove your worth on one. You give them a good job, and you always make, I would say, a little bit of a compromise on the commercials in that first one to give them what they want at a reasonable price, to show them that the next time when you come around, I've asserted my quality. So I think that is an approach that a lot of people don't do. It's very aada teda. Another thing I think that's very key.
But that's a very good point. Actually, that's what we followed in the start. Really, because one of our first groups that we penetrated was the Godrej group.
Right.
So you had like 4, 5, 6 businesses suddenly from that one group if you do well in one.
And it sends a great message to the market also.
Yeah, conservative group, right? So
Parsis.
Conservative group who are putting their trust in somebody new. Then that sends a signal to the market saying that, look,
they're an institution in business in India. So for sure, that's a good way. That would be one, I would say, definitely, that we approach it from a group perspective. And I think second is, it's important. A lot of people try to take it as an insult to some extent if you tell them that, what's your specialty or what's your niche. There's nothing wrong with having a specialty or a niche. If you have a particular talent pool that's good at sports brands or good at fashion brands, penetrate that market as hard as you possibly can, because what I think has stood out for us and what will stand out for an agency starting out from scratch is a great amount of case studies. And that can only be done when you do something and you do it well. Because there's no point making a case study with like average results, right? You want to show the best possible and without exaggerating, obviously. So I think that is one message.
The other thing, I would say from my early days, maybe not in the Schbang days, but much earlier, what I would always take is that I would take when I was a lot younger, I would take a guy who's young inside the ecosystem with a point to prove. So I'd make that guy my kind of like, ally in that sense. And I say, like, remove all the information that you can understand. Tell me how we can impress your boss together. Because if we are impressing your boss together, your boss is going to trust and give the job to both of us. If the mandate is not super like
complex or like large.
Like critical, so if it's not the biggest bread owner of the company, and it's not going to be like, hey, if I give it to this guy and if some small mistake happens, then I'm screwed. But like if I give a mandate which is reasonably important, high growth, but not if it fails, then it's finished.
End all be all types.
So then I think that would also work like for a new setup, I feel.
For sure.
But so coming back to this whole bit, like when you speak about building a business and also building a relationship, I've seen that you're very good at building a relationship with the other side. So if in a negotiation, typically it's less about you versus me and more about how can we solve this
common
together.
Goal, yeah, for sure.
So how do you kind of, build that common ground?
So, I mean, this is something that I've picked up a long time ago. I think I don't know where also I got it from, but business is essentially done with people. Like at the end of the day, we're doing a service, we're providing them with a specialized video, we're making them a website, whatever the actual specific might be or the particulars might be. It's that personal relationship where you have to, in that first few interactions, make the person believe that, dude, I can trust this person. He is someone who will not promise me something and then go back on his word. So I think that establishing of that, and that's a lot about how you present yourself in that first conversation where you sometimes give out a little bit more information about yourself because you want that person to feel comfortable with you.
Got it.
Also, judging the person, I think, is very, very critical. Something that you pick up over the years where you understand from someone's body language, from their tonality, from the kind of words that they're speaking to you with, what their viewpoint on you is.
Right.
Once you understand whether they're pro you, against you, then you form your strategy on how you can do it. Also, something that I think I learned from you a long time ago was build a personal relationship. If you have a personal relationship from before and you have like someone within that ecosystem, it always helps, because having someone bat for you before you go and present, obviously they're not giving you any unfair advantage, but batting for you a little bit before goes a long way in opening those doors. So crack that relationship. I do a lot of making those relationships on LinkedIn, following people's career trajectory, when they're growing, making sure those little nuances, congratulations on the job, happy birthday, it goes a long way when you ask. Because what I see a lot of youngsters also doing today, not just from a job, from a winning business perspective, but even from searching for a job perspective. I'm sure you get this way more than I do. They'll add you on LinkedIn, they'll say, hi, how are you? And straight up come to the point, I'm looking for a job. You're not incentivized to help them because you don't know them. You've just built that interaction. So build that little personal relationship before you come down to Kaam Ki Baat. I think something that the Swiss do really well in business. They have a thing, right? When you enter a Swiss business, 10 minutes you have to do small talk.
Really?
You can't straight get into business. You have to do
a Swiss thing.
Yeah, it's a little chit chat, little pleasantry. Find out about their family, find out about their job, find out about their passion. So you can work all of that into your conversation the next time.
Got it.
I think relatability.
So do you follow this Swiss approach?
As much as possible. I used to do it when we had 2-3 leads coming in on a daily basis. But now I think that's something that I'm trying across the BD team. All of us have built that thing where we try to own one relationship with one person. And do that little chit chat, do that little small talk.
Yeah.
So it automatically seems a little nicer.
Yeah. And you've made the switch yourself from being operations, like you used to be a group account manager, group solution manager, and then you switched to BD. And what are some of the things that, like, if there's a guy like you, would you say you were better at one job versus the other? And what's...
Yeah, I would definitely say I feel that I'm better at the current job than the past one.
And as head of new business?
Yeah. Or even in a business development capacity, forget as just head of new business, even just as a pure, if I had to look at it without designations involved, if I had to just choose department by department, I'd say I'm more inclined towards business. But also I think goes a little bit to me as a person. I like that.
Yeah, so I'm just trying to understand, for the people who are those, which will be more inclined towards that. So what are the signals for you which tell you that, hey, I'm better for this job? Like this in me. So if a guy is listening and he's got these skills, he's probably better fit for this job.
Yeah.
But cut your teeth at the operation side is what you mentioned at the start anyway.
You have to. If you don't cut, I think one made me better at the other. For sure, I don't think for me, operations is something I personally I don't see myself doing for a long time, because it's a lot of regular execution, right? Like You're working on one set of brands and you're building that. So if you're a person who likes to build something on a long-term basis from that perspective, operations are better fit. But I like that challenge or that thrill, you get when you're in a new environment, being able to talk to a new person and getting them to see your point of view while understanding theirs, controlling the conversation. It gives me a mad thrill. And also the thrill of winning business. I like that a lot of people, I think even in Schbang, when you take that target conversation in front of them, or this is the number, this is how much you have to achieve, it makes them change it switches them off in a way, right? Then it all becomes about the money, that I have to do so much business to get so much money. I like that target. I think of it's a new, unique way. There are different frontiers which we can conquer. And it's all about building the business sustainably, right? It's growing that business, and it takes a little bit of thought. You can't, I think that's something that Anna told me before she left, is that you have to be picky in the kind of business that you bring in, because you might interact with them for 1 or 2 months, but the company has to interact with them for 3 to 4 years.
Yeah.
So that ability to map where that business is going and look at it from a very macro level is something that gives me a great thrill.
Yeah.
So I think that's why I feel I'm better adapted to that. And also I love to talk. I love the sound of my own voice. So BD gives me that chance.
So Anna, for the viewers, is the predecessor that we've been speaking about. She was head of new business and now she's heading digital at Estee Lauder.
Yeah.
I think, this point which you make about you have to deal with for some time, but the whole company has to deal with for
a long time.
So, I think that's a very critical point, because actually it's, the retention rate of a company is what really makes or breaks a company. It's not really the
inward flow,
pitch rate.
Yeah,
Of course the pitch rate makes it.
No, but you're right.
But you have to sustain. Otherwise, then if it's not sustained, pitch is going to keep digging. So that's not how we want to do it. So when you're doing that, when you're passing on the information, so you spoke about a little bit about the winning. The winning is a little bit about the saying things that are more possible to do. That's one point that you made. You said it's also about building the relationship, which is the second. Of course, your portfolio speaks for itself, which is the third.
Correct.
References, all of that helps. And then you go in and you make a strong pitch. And we'll come to what makes a strong pitch. But after you made this strong pitch, actually, maybe we should just talk about what makes a strong pitch in the first place.
For sure, it makes sense. Then we can.
Yeah, because what is it that to you makes a strong pitch for a company? And this is not just in advertising, right? It could be in any industry.
Correct.
Because ultimately it's a shake of hands, a shake of trust.
Correct.
Saying that, okay, these guys get me, so I'm awarding this contract to them. So what is it that to you makes a strong pitch?
So I'll keep this I'll try to make this not very stereotypical answers. I won't break down the flow of a presentation, but I would say you look at it from 3 to 4 perspectives. First, you understand what they have come to you with. 2, what their perception of their brand is, what the actuality of their brand is.
So what do you mean by what they have come to you with? What problem they come to you?
Their market statement, okay, I'm looking for someone to help me bolster my presence, engagement, community, sales, whatever it is. It's everyone has something. So those objectives have to be very clearly defined, and I think they have to be, you can't have 5, 6, 7, 8 objectives, because if you're trying to achieve 5, 6, 7, 8 objectives, you're a jack of all, master of none.
Right.
You distill that down to maybe 2 or 3 very clear actionable points. What's very key is to see the perception that they have of their brand, because there are a lot of times that they're on the same page as well, but there is a lot of times the perception of a brand versus the reality of a brand are very different things, which is where I think that attrition happens of a client, where they are too stuck on their perception, or you have not bought into their perception and you have a different reality. So you have to make those two somewhat mirror each other. You have to bring them either on the same page or get what you think their problems are, dispel those notions. So that is, once you have that clearly identified, I think building Consumer comes out, say, secondary, after we first establish that industry a little bit. We understand how it operates, what works, what doesn't work in the industry. That's a lot of research that I think has again set, if you were to ask me what set the BD team at Schbang apart, is a lot of research goes into it, a lot of understanding on a consumer level, on a business level, on an operator level goes into it. So you understand that environment in which they operate, obviously go into their consumer in as much detail as you possibly can. And something that we've started doing now, which has been very helpful, is a tissue session. So in addition to the brief forms that we give out and all of the conversation that we have, after we've absorbed the brief, done a couple of brainstorms, we go back to them with a whole bunch of questions that we feel are more relevant, potentially talk to their consumer if possible, or talk to someone. I don't really talk to the business is consumer because they'll obviously make me talk to someone who will say what they want them to say. I identify who their consumer is and find someone from my own social network or find someone from the Schbang ecosystem who maps that and talk to them about it and get a very real perspective of what the consumer feels and what the consumer doesn't feel. Basis all of this information, I think if you draw your aha moment or your reason to believe, those insights are, I think, the framework. And then the creative
and
team.
then that's what you do in the tissue session.
Yes.
With the client.
Formalize those insights, understand that, okay, is this a business problem? Is this a good enough assumption to make which will solve the problem? Yeah. And then formalize that as my insight and build my communication strategy, build my ideas, build my campaign off that.
Got it. And, it's interesting that you spoke about creative teams also, and, getting the most out of creative teams is
very, very key.
Is key.
Yeah, for
sure. So would you say you are a creative person?
I'd like to believe that I am because I feel like I can contribute, but I would not say that I'm as creative as the experts who are actually working with us on these.
So you have an appreciation for creativity, but you may not be the
most creative
guy in the room. But you can get the creative energies flowing.
Yeah.
So what is it in a room that you do to get the creative energies?
So I feel like a lot of it is that you have to have a little bit of that masti in the starting. Because these creative guys, they're so creative, but they get really bogged down by the operational, and for them it's literally like a calendar invite that I have 1 hour to think about this and I have to move on to the next thing. So to make it not seem so routine or so mundane, I feel like I try to build a little bit of a personal rapport with all of them, and I have with all of the ones that I work with regularly. Have a little bit of like conversation, have a little bit of time pass, crack a few jokes. And I don't believe that like these guys know what they're doing. So our job is just to keep them on the right track. But that doesn't mean we just keep them on the right track like a trainer, like a hunter behind them. No, stick to the idea. There are different ways. I think my opinion is the best way to do it, or the way to bring out something in a person is to have a little fun with them first. Because when they laugh, when they're in a better mood, automatically the kind of ideas that are coming from a more positive space. So if you build that narrative and you build that, like this is not just like come here, give me the idea and get lost. It's that we're here to understand, and also we're here to like develop our relationship further because we work together so closely. Building that personal fun element brings out the best ideas in my opinion.
Got it. And from the standpoint of, like now you won this pitch, you understood the stuff that the client requires, you understood the objectives, you understood the consumer, you've delivered a good creative pitch. Is there any, actually before we go to the next thing, is there any like creative pitch that you remember which you really felt in the gut saying that?
HDFC life insurance. Like I felt it in my gut that we're winning this for sure. Even Ghania, like when we were pitching it, like these were pitches I think at the point of time where we were also, for at least me personally, was the first time that I was pitching to such large brands where like the kind of inflow that's going to come from this kind of business is going to set up maybe like a team with its targets for the full year. So first time that I was working on these pitches, I think just the energy, the excitement and that hunger that was there in the team to like prove that, we are ready to compete at the biggest scale. We are ready to go into any of the biggest business houses and confident that we will win them. I think that was a big turning point for the business development team because up until that point, we were going into pitches confident but not sure of the outcome. That switched this thing to allow us to understand that, okay, basis what pitch we have, we've been able to evaluate whether we're going to win it or not win it. And also win it a little bit before the pitch itself. Like have that little conversation with that confidence with the client that I'm coming to you with everything you need. Now let's talk about some other things. That confidence when you exude, I think the client also responds to that well because they think, okay, this person is assuming that he's going to win this pitch means he has the ideas that he's coming with. That's why he's talking about maybe financials or talking about legal formalities with me so preemptively.
Got it. Yeah, but like, I mean, what's the fine line? Because sometimes
it might come off as cocky. Yeah, definitely, for sure. It might seem too presumptuous. The line is, again, that personal relationship, right? You have to understand very early on when you're talking to the client in those initial interactions
that you got what they want.
Yes, and that you say those right few things, you finish their sentences, they automatically feel like, okay, this guy is attuned with me. But when that kind of interaction is not happening in the first conversation and they are maybe really busy, really senior, or really just like there are too many agencies pitching that they don't want to get personally invested, you have to make sure that you draw back. You don't push.
Yeah. And then once you win the pitch, there's that part of the 2 months that I'm talking, and there's 4 years, 5 years, 10 years that the rest of the team's got to talk. So, how do you ensure that everything that you learned on the pitch is translated in? Is there some kind of like a format that you guys have, documents?
There's two things. So earlier, I think there was one gap that we were facing where I don't think that we were transferring as much information possible to the creative or to the operations teams after an account was signed. So to bridge that gap, we did two things. First is, as a rule of thumb now, the creative team that works on a pitch is the creative team that gets allotted on the brand for sure. Because that brings some sort of consistency. Because business development, all clients also know that, yeah, you all are here, you all will say everything that we want to hear you all say, but then you all disappear from the equation and someone else comes in your place. So that is one definite thing that
So you bring the teams on the pitch itself?
Yes, and bring the teams in the brainstorm. Second thing that you also need to do very clearly is, I think, is have a very real, honest conversation with the creative and the operations teams about the client that they're dealing with. You have to tell them the things that you have picked up along the way about what they respond to, what they don't respond to. So once they work like that, it just fits very seamlessly into the entire equation. So I think that is a very, very key factor.
And is there like some stuff that you keep in mind and what these real things are?
Yeah, like in terms of how they respond, what is their kind of things to timelines, how do they respond to big ideas versus how they respond to small ideas, what kind of a person they are, where they stand in the hierarchy, how much bureaucracy is there. Like understanding an organization structure before transferring it into the operations thing is vital. Because a lot of times what happens is people who were interacting with the pitches are the super bosses.
Right.
But the people who were interacting with in the day-to-day operations will be maybe 3, 4, 5 rungs down who have to go all the way up to get that approval. So to help the operations team, maybe a senior member of the operations team, be it a GSM or be it the VP, to build that, transfer that relationship or that goodwill that the BD team has tried to build with the super boss over to the senior most member in the operations team. So thereby that top level relationship stays and then that translates down for sure.
Got it.
Another thing I think that we also created is multiple forms. The brief form that we share with the client is shared with the operations team so they know what was their perception. We also share the notes or the minutes from the tissue session that we do with the operations team and the pitch. And we like to essentially take them through the pitch, not from the perspective that, they don't get the ideas that we have, but just to talk them through some of the nuances or maybe even commitments that we've made to the client when we're pitching. Because I said that comes back to the first point that we're trying to pitch with an executional perspective in mind. So if we pitch an idea telling them that we've thought of this from an executional perspective and then an operations team comes in and says, no, we have to clamp it down or we have to scale it up, there's a disconnect there. And then that automatically that trust factor maybe gets slightly frayed.
So in your viewpoint, if the business development team is given that commitment should be stuck to. Because that's then we are one. It's not
our word is our bond, right? Like that's what we say. So
Yeah.
I mean, it shouldn't just be a talk the talk or something that we put in our proposals.
Correct.
So we have to, even sometimes if it comes at a cost, and we've had some of these difficult conversations with operations teams where maybe the business team has been a little bit overzealous in signing the business because it's been a marquee client or we've really wanted it. And the operations team has been like, no, this is really maybe eating into my profit margin or eating into my time consumption. But those difficult conversations have to be had sometimes and said that, yeah, take the bullet, take that hit, but provide the service at any cost. Because once that happens is when they really open up their purse strings or open up their real briefs to you and give you that thing because they see that you're a person who delivers on what they promise.
Yeah. Now you are running an 8-member new business team at Schbang. So there's about 8 people for about 500 workforce that is driving the new business. So I guess this 8 remains till we are about 700 odd people. But when it comes to you grooming your people and grooming your teams, what is it that you look for when you're building people in your team?
So I say this a lot. This is when I'm building people in my team or I'm looking to hire people in my team also. There are, I think, 3 factors that I look at most importantly, specifically for business development. One is your communication skill has to be impeccable. And I don't mean that you speak well. It has to be where you have that ability to be a great orator when required, because I think that's what we do, right? The gift of the gab is very important. Second, because of the kind of nature of business that we do, ethics and the kind of person that like honesty is paramount because we're dealing with numbers. We have access to the balance sheet. We know how much business is coming in, how much business is going out. We know how much hypothetical salary structure is of every individual. So ethics is very, very key in a person because I don't believe that a lot of people who come into our industry, most of them are very young. I don't think they come in with the wrong intentions or they come in with a malicious intent in life from that perspective. They generally end up, when they make a mistake, they feel that they have to cover it up. And we had a couple of instances of that. So being able to tell that person that I will take your biggest, like horrible truths, but I won't take your nicest lies is something that I like to establish very upfront. And the last thing I think that's very important is we've characterized this, and this might sound slightly snobbish, but as like a South Bombay business brain or a Bombay business brain, like that, that mentality of dhanda.
Yeah,
has
maybe
to
not
be,
South.
Yeah, I mean, I say that from a perspective, and I don't mean to be like in any way snobbish. I think some of the greatest minds come from North Bombay also.
Or outside Bombay.
Sure. But yeah.
You have teams in Delhi and Bangalore also.
I do, but they're Bombay at heart. But no, I'm just, all jokes apart. I think the most important thing is that business mentality, that mindset, and that thrill that comes, when you sign a piece of business. If these three things are there, everything else can be taught.
Got it. And like when it comes to, there's a lot of your work drills down to targets and like really regimentally following targets and setting targets and then, all of that stuff. So, when you're working with targets, how often do you look at them? Is it like you look at them every day, or is it like, hey, I've actually just looked at them now, I got my framework, now I'll look at them after a month and a half, once I've put my wheels in motion, but then every day my wheels are in motion.
Correct.
So what's the process like?
So I don't look at, I create the framework in my head because I believe continuously looking at the target becomes very caustic if you keep every day checking on it.
Yeah.
So I don't do that at all. The wheels are in motion. I have a stand that no business is too big or too small. So it's good to sign the big business when it comes, obviously, but the regular small business signing, I think, alleviates the tension and the pressure on the teams. If you can just consistently set a target, like in the BD team, we have this little conversation internally that every week, at least 2 things have to close. Regardless.
2 things have to close.
2 things have to close. They can
Nice.
be a 5,000 rupee thing, they can be a 50 lakh rupee thing, but 2 things have to close. Because once that...
Good news.
Yeah, good news. That uplifts everyone. That's the most important thing. And on our BD groups also, it's very important when something is signed, everyone is told about it.
Yeah.
It is that immediate little bit like buoyancy.
Dopamine rush.
Yeah, that dopamine rush, that hit that it gives you of, it's working. So I think that is key. I don't think looking at the numbers helps you. Because
So I look at the numbers. For me, when I look at the numbers, I look at numbers in 2 ways. One is the numbers that are supposed to be like, you need it to be regimental to run the ship, like compliance numbers, collection numbers, stuff that needs to be coming
Cash
in
flows,
on an everyday basis. And stuff that's within your control because you build it, you send out the invoice. Now, if you've not got the money, it's your bad.
Correct.
And then there's the other side of growth. Growth is often not in your control. You can strategize for growth, but you can't control growth.
Absolutely.
So what I try to do is, particularly on the growth side, is that look at it from a 45-day to 60-day window and then keep visiting it. But like I've set the seeds and then I'm like, okay, I know where this is going. And inevitably, if you follow this small wins rule, then, the growth gets hit.
It does. And what I also do is every time something is registered, so I've created that framework, and in that framework, I've kept space to fill in the numbers. So that gives me a little bit of tasalli every day when I fill in a new number under one of the business verticals. That, okay, stuff is moving. As long as stuff keeps happening, I think you're in the right track. When it comes down to me staring at the numbers on a daily basis is now. In Q4 is when now you're at home stretch and you understand that, okay, this much is left. That means it's a factor of so many pitches that need to be done, so much business needs to be tried for so much to be closed. Because we have a little bit of an understanding of our conversion rate. For every 10 pitches we pitch, say 6 or 7 will convert. That's in the last year we've had, touch wood, a great conversion record. But I think it's very important to just be at it regularly. Don't get bogged down by it on the day to day because every day that number is not going to change.
Got it.
You're going to keep coming back and feeling bad.
Okay, and now, I've not asked you this before. I'm just going to ask you now.
Saving it for the Schbang podcast.
Which is, like if we are going in, we're going to try to build a global business. So, we are building a global business. We will build a global business. There's no trying on it. We will win. But, for winning in that, and, we've been winning national businesses and that's been good.
Correct.
But winning there in the global markets, what do you think we're going to need?
So, I think 2 things. One, which you've already tried to put down, is that we're trying to showcase ourselves as we're taking a slice of India and giving it to the rest of the world, that cultural beauty and all. But I think what we'll definitely need is a couple of people who understand the market well. Like, I think that's why our current business development team has been so successful, is because each person understands the Indian or one part of the large Indian market very well. So what's going to be key is get someone who's street smart, who gets how business actually operates. There's a reality and then there's an idealistic picture. So we need someone who's more close to the real aspect, and we need someone who's young and who's hungry. Because when you're young and hungry, you want to prove yourself.
And we'll need strong operations also, because like you said at the start, we'll need to be able to show success in the markets that we go into.
For sure.
And then win those. That's cool. And finally, like when you are there's all of this business, and you're winning business, you are growing teams. Which part of this whole thing that you do, which part of it is it that you enjoy the most, or like you get thrilled by the most?
I get thrilled by the business closing. When I look at an account and I see how much value, like I'm a very capitalistic guy from that perspective. So I think whenever I see a large chunk of business or a like really influential piece of business being won, where there's good press coming from it, where there's a strong revenue stream coming from it, I think that's what excites me. That the challenge excites me, right? Like the target numbers that come in, they increase year on year. I don't look at it as like, oh no, how am I going to do this? I think of it as sick, an ability to prove that we can do more. Like it's a little, it might sound egoistic, it might come off as maybe slightly pompous, but that thrill of being able to get your way when there are many other people vying for the same thing, who are giving the same service as you, and to stand out in that crowd.
That's what you need, right?
Yeah, that's what I think
what you need. It's like it's going into war.
It's like being the prom queen. That's a negative analogy. I would say it's the positive version of it, is that you're that one person who's the object of everyone's desire. I think creating that persona is something that drives me at least the most.
Okay, and what is it that you get fueled by? Like what is it that you use to fuel yourself? Because obviously you're good at what you do. You've done this, now you've gone and you've delivered that growth.
We have this on record for my appraisal.
Yeah, so you're good at what you do. Your appraisal is reflecting that. So it's you must be doing some stuff outside of the workplace which fuels you to get better at what you do. So what is some of that?
So I would say there are 2 things or 3 things that I actually do from that. So 2 will be a little bit more learning oriented, and 1 might sound a little bit out there, but I think I'm a very avid sports watcher and player. So that competitiveness that comes through sports, I think that competitive energy which I can bring, I've been able to like somewhat box that up and like use that whenever I need to. So that competitive spirit is one thing that keeps me burning for sure. The second thing that I do that I think keeps me sharp is I watch a lot of content from business leaders, and what I believe is history is cyclical, right? Everything that someone has done maybe 5, 10, 15 years ago will be of value 15 years in the future. So just hearing different people's perspective, what they've done, what they haven't done, and picking up, like I steal good habits.
What is something good you stole recently?
So something that I've stolen recently that I would say from someone, I've stolen it from actually someone from my team. There's someone from my team who I've noticed over the years that even if good enough is not good enough, it has to be to that level of perfection that I've seen in someone lately, that even if it's Sunday, Saturday, Monday, if it's not up to the mark, it's not up to the mark. And the ability to have that honesty and say that, because a lot of times it's difficult to, even in my position, the creative team, the BD team has worked on something for 2 weeks, 3 weeks. We're about to pitch it, say after long hours, weekends, and that output is not there yet. It's not like it's bad or it's wrong, but that ability to say, no, it's not perfect. I saw that in someone in my team, which I thought was brilliant, and it was consistent. So I said, I have to pick this up for sure. So that is something that I think would be a cool one.
And also you are like, now I'm going down a slightly different tangent, but there's lots of people. I think you are a great example of somebody who's part of a larger system and you are killing it inside the larger system. This is always like this thing of like, do I go solo? Do I do this on my own? Versus do I join a larger ship? Or do I, join a building ship?
This question very recently. I have a great answer for it.
Yeah, like do I join a ship that's building up? Do I join a large ship? I could go solo. So like, what is it? How is it that somebody like you looks at that?
So I think to define something like that, you have to be very critical about yourself. So something that I've identified about myself is that first, the scale at which we're operating right now at, for me to get to on my own hypothetically would take a very long time, and not necessarily would go that way. I've gotten accustomed, or I enjoy now playing in the big league. I can't go back to being in a smaller scale for sure. So that's one thought. Second part is about myself personally. There are some aspects of this business which I think I'd excel at, but there are some aspects of this business which I just do not think I'll be able to do. Like if it looks at the hiring functionality, the finance functionality, the operations, like dealing with that stress is just something that I won't thrive under.
Got it.
And I've accepted that about myself. There are people who want to be entrepreneurs and who want to build, and there are people who want to be in a space that they know that they're good at and like thrive. I think I'm the latter. I don't know if I have that.
Yeah, I think that's a
built
great
up.
point about, this idea about acknowledging some paths, but actually more importantly about thriving in the paths that you are meant for.
Yeah,
that
absolutely.
spotlight is then on the spotlight, and that's.
I equate it to cricket very simply. Like I'm very cocky again definition, but Sachin was a shit captain, but he was a great player. The moment they took away the captaincy from him, he could go back to doing what he wanted to do. I think everyone should evaluate themselves that way. That you might think that my image should lead me to this point, but that's image, that's perception, that's people. You have to be honest with yourself that, okay, this is what I can do and this is what I can't do. And if you try to do too much of what you can't do, you end up getting frustrated and failing.
Cool. Indraneel Gawde to being more Sachin with the BD team and winning more and more business. It's been a pleasure talking through all of this stuff. I think it was
Likewise.
Good, fun conversation
Very
on,
much so. Very
on
much
what people can take out of this. So I hope people find it useful.
Even I hope. And I hope potential clients are also listening and they know that we're always
I'm also interested in potential clients, but also in like a lot of potential talent, because I think we want the best people to join what we're doing here, so that, when you bring in the business, it's the best people who are.
Yeah, for sure. That's why I said, right,
who are delivering the business.
You want to build, I want a star.
Yeah.
So we look at it from different perspectives, and I think that's what helps, like these kind of podcasts, different like perspectives, and you find what fits you.
Yeah, for sure. No, I mean, I've got to understand. I've got the opportunity to understand some more sides also. So I think that from that standpoint, it was good.
My pleasure.
Good. Thank you.
Thank you.